What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben, and welcome back to another episode of Ben Builds with Joe. We're back on the Lagg-3 by ICM, and it has been a while since we've been on this kit. I'm not sure exactly how long, but we put this aside, had other projects coming up, a lot of stuff going on in real life, so I just haven't had a time to get back onto it. But now, we're looking pretty decent, so we're going to push forward and try to get this kit all finished off. I talked to Joe, too. I think he's going to start up his Lagg again, and hopefully we'll be able to pull it together and get both of our Laggs all finished up and put on our display shelves. Now, one thing I did want to talk a little bit about here is the fit on the ICM kit. Sometimes they're really close, and other times, like this kit, they're just not there. Take the front nose here, for example. There's a large step there. We need to go ahead and remove that, and it's just going to take a lot of work. Also, the cockpit went together fairly well. The last thing we have to do is put in the seat, and I think it should just fit right down here on its own pedestal. Something like that. That should be fine. But we need to go ahead and put on some seat belts, so I'm not going to glue down the seat just yet. I'm going to leave that off until a little bit later. Put that aside for now. Also, we need to go ahead and work on the front cowling. Like most ICM kits, you have multiple versions you can build out of this one kit. So you have a couple different parts and pieces that you can interchange. This nose here needs quite a bit of work to make sure that it fits down on those seams and it doesn't kind of hang out or stick up in certain areas, that it looks the part. So a couple of swipes with the jeweler file. Let's test it, see if that did any improvement whatsoever. And yes, it did. So we're going to be able to work on that, and it'll take some time, but we should be able to get that all nicely ironed out, and eventually we'll get it glued down. Not just yet, though, because I need to go ahead and figure out what to do with the gun barrels, but we'll get to that eventually. The front nose area right here, that needs a lot of work as well. There's a huge seam there we need to go ahead and remove. Might need some super glue on that. And also the back section here with that rear trunking that comes out of the oil cooler. That also needs to be fixed up, and we're going to need to use some super glue. Now moving on to the wings, we have to build the front area for the intake here on the oil cooler. This all has to be put together, and there's a couple of different parts and pieces that we need to go ahead and clean up and then install. So I'm going to go ahead and cue up a time lapse though, and just push through it as fast as we can to get on to the more pressing matter of the fuselage and wing joint. So let's go ahead and hit that time lapse. We're going to clean up these parts. We're going to glue them down, and I'm hoping it'll all fit together well, and we'll be rocking and rolling. Let's do it. All right, we had to do a little bit of work here and there and shave down some parts, but I think we have it a pretty decent fit right in here. I'm happy with it. So let's go ahead and test fit that with the fuselage. And yes, just as I thought, the top of the oil cooler trench actually contacts the bottom of the pilot armor. So that has to be shaved down a little bit on the top of that oil cooler. Like I said, that's one thing with ICM. Sometimes the parts fit together decently. Other times they're so close, but yet there's just something that's not quite right. Also here on the wing root joint, we have a little bit of an issue because there's too much material on the fuselage and those wing joints are super tight. So when you go ahead and put them together, as you can notice, the dihedral is absolutely gone. You take that fuselage off, it has a little bit of a nice upward tilt to the wings. We need to go ahead and remove a lot of plastic off of the fuselage. We have other seams like the oil cooler and that rear section on the fuselage, as well as the top spine area and of course the nose. A lot of the areas need to have a good amount of TLC with some jeweler files, sandpaper, X-Acto knife, whatever we need. I was also able to off camera to go ahead and drop a little bit of super glue on some of these areas. And I got to tell you, super glue is a great filler. It dries hard, and this one here dries very quickly. And we're able to go ahead and sand it within a couple of minutes. Now, one of the areas we do have to be really careful of here is on the back of the oil cooler. There's actually a little window. I'm not sure what it does, but there's a window back here. We need to go ahead and make sure that's covered up with some tape so when we're sanding things down, we don't accidentally sand or nick that window. I don't know how clear it's supposed to be, but I don't want to take any chances. Then we're going to just take our jeweler files and we're going to work systematically from the tail all the way along the bottom of the aircraft. All the areas nicely smoothed out, recontoured, and sanded down. I want this to look pretty decent because remember, the Lagg wasn't actually made of metal. It had metal around the front cowling. There was just reinforcing strips here and there. Most of the fuselage was made of a laminate wood. So there wouldn't be a lot of panel lines or joints. It would be mostly just kind of smooth, very clean. So let's go ahead and cue up a time lapse, guys. We're going to focus on trying to clean up all the seams we can and push forward with hopefully a really nice looking Lagg-3 fuselage. All right, that took a lot of sanding as well, but I think we are finally in a good position to go ahead and check the fuselage and the wing joint once again and do some work on that. Like I mentioned before, the top of the oil cooler kind of sits a little bit too proud there, and it contacts the bottom of the armor plating for the pilot. I'm going to go ahead and just remove a little bit of plastic off the top of this oil cooler. That should give it just enough room to go ahead and make sure that that rear armor plating doesn't interfere with the wing joint. Also take a little bit of plastic off of the internal wing joint as well, just so that it doesn't have any other excuse, and we can focus on the fuselage because this is going to be a little bit of a troubled area. Quick test fit, let's check it out. And yeah, the oil cooler does fit much better, but again, we have to take a lot of material off this wing root because it just does not want to fit. You have to kind of force it in there, and if you do that, it kind of splays the wings outward, and you lose that really nice subtle dihedral. So we have to come back and do some heavy work on that area. To do that, I'm just going to grab a nice jeweler file, a couple of jeweler files probably, and we're just going to aggressively attack this fuselage right here and just get a lot of that plastic removed. We're going to have to be pretty aggressive with that, but I think after a couple of swipes, we should be able to test fit it. Just keep taking some plastic off and test fitting and taking some plastic off and test fitting till we are happy with the results. Already that's looking much better. We have a lot to do though, so I'm going to do that off camera. We'll be right back. So we have taken off a ton of material here off the fuselage, and it is fitting a lot better with those wings. Now when we go ahead and put these two parts together, we have a nice upward slope of the wing, so that dihedral has returned, and that's awesome. Again, a lot of material we took off here off the sides of the fuselage, and honestly, it's much better for it, so I am happy. Of course, we're going to have to go ahead and contend with a few other issues here and there, like the backs of the wings, right where it meets that fuselage joint. There's plastic that's not there, or the fuselage was short shot or something, because it's just, there's not enough plastic to cover the entire area. And I'm pretty sure that didn't actually exist on the real plane. So we're going to have to go ahead and figure out how we can fix that. I'm thinking maybe to mask off the area and hit it with some super glue, let that dry and then sand it down. But I don't really know for sure. We're going to have to test it and just try different techniques. But we are going to have to go ahead and glue down the fuselage to the wings. I think we are finally at a really good position that we can apply glue and be satisfied with the overall results. Not too bad, a lot of work, but we're getting there. Now to actually secure the wing to the fuselage, I'm just going to use some Tamiya extra thin. The capillary effect will pull that glue down where I want it, and that should be just fine. Like I said, there's a lot of ill-fitting parts on this Lagg, and I don't want anything to kind of shift out of alignment. I want everything to be as smooth and as aligned as possible. It's a little bit of glue here and there. I did notice they have a large seam at the back here where the oil cooler meets the wing. That's got to be either faired in, or we might use some plastic card or something. There's also a little bit too much material at the very front of the wing, right by those front intakes. That needs to be taken down just a little bit. No matter how much I try to move that wing around, I just cannot fill that back seam. It just is open. There's just a gap there. So that's fine. We'll either float with some plastic card, or we'll drop some super glue in there or something to that effect. Now, last thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and use some tape to kind of reinforce and pull these wings together and keep them nice and tensioned against that fuselage side. Now, to do that, we're going to use some tape. Like I mentioned, we're just going to tape it down to the underside of one of the wings, drape it up over top onto the fuselage, and then back over around to the other side of the bottom of that wing. It'll keep enough pressure on that we should be good to go. So that's it for today. I'm gonna let this dry off camera for a couple hours, and we'll jump back on it and see what else we can do. So until next episode, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. It's good to be back on the Lagg, and I'm hoping to get this finished up within a couple episodes. Until the next time here on the bench, thank you so much for watching. You know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, and we'll go ahead and see you back here on the next episode of Ben Builds with Joe. Until then, guys, take it easy, and we'll see you soon.